The wooden table broke first. It cracked down the middle with a sound like a gunshot, sending plates of steaming rice crashing into the mud. Grains scattered. Pepper soup spilled like blood across the ground. And 3 children froze mid-bite. For 1 second, the entire Oshodi market went silent. Then the shouting began.
Pack this nonsense now!
Who told you I can't sell here?
You think this is charity ground?
Mornike Ajayi stood there, 40 years old, barefoot on wet ground, staring at the food she had cooked since dawn now sinking into dirty water. Her hands trembled. Not because of the stall. Not because of the money. But because the 3 boys beside her, the triplets, were still holding spoons. They had not eaten properly in 2 days. One of them slowly lowered his spoon.
Auntie, are we in trouble?
Nike opened her mouth. No words came out. The market officials kicked the last pot aside. It rolled. Dented. Useless. Next time we see you feeding street children here, one of them said coldly, we will seize everything. They walked away. Laughter followed them. Mocking. Loud. Cruel. Mornike slowly knelt in the mud and began picking grains of rice with her bare fingers, ignoring the dirt, ignoring the stares. The boys tried to help. Stop, she whispered. Don't touch that. Her voice cracked. This was not how her day was supposed to end. Before we continue, tell me, where are you watching from right now? And how is the weather treating you wherever you are? Rainy, sunny, cold, hot? Drop it in the comments. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told slowly, deeply, and honestly, subscribe. Not for noise, but for stories that stay with you long after the video ends. Now, let me tell you how Mornike ended up here. The morning had started like every other morning. She woke up before the first call to prayer, her body already aching from years of standing too long and eating too little. Her one-room space smelled of kerosene and damp cement. She washed her face with cold water, looked at herself in a cracked mirror. Just endure today, she told the woman staring back. Just today. That was always the promise. By 5:30 a.m., she was already in Oshodi market, arranging her small stall, wood nailed together unevenly, held up more by prayer than strength. Rice, beans, pepper soup. Nothing fancy, but clean and hot. Customers liked that. What they didn't like was her habit. The triplets arrived shortly after sunrise. They always did. 3 boys. Same height. Same eyes. Same silence. No shoes. No parents. No begging bowls. They simply stood a few steps away and waited. At first, Mornike pretended not to see them. Not because she was wicked. Because poverty teaches you to look away if you want to survive. But that morning, one of them swayed. His knees buckled slightly. Mornike felt something twist painfully inside her chest. She called them closer. Sit, she said softly, pulling out 3 empty plastic chairs. They obeyed without speaking. She served them rice. No discount. No leftovers. Full portions. A woman buying food beside them hissed. Madam, be careful. You can't save everybody. Mornike smiled weakly. I know. The boys ate slowly, like people afraid the food might disappear. And then, the officials came. They didn't greet. They didn't ask questions. They kicked. They destroyed. And just like that, Mornike became a warning example. As she cleaned the mess, whispers spread. She's foolish. She likes suffering. That's why she's still poor at 40. Nobody mentioned the boys. Nobody asked where they would eat next. The rain started not long after. Light at first. Then heavier. Mornike packed what was left of her things into a nylon bag. She looked at the triplets. Go, she said gently. Go and find shelter. They didn't move. Please, she added, before the rain gets worse. One of them shook his head. We will wait with you. Her eyes burned. She turned away so they wouldn't see her cry. This market had taken everything from her once already. Her dignity, her marriage, her future. Now it was trying to take her kindness too. As rain soaked her wrapper, Mornike asked herself a question she had never dared to ask out loud. If doing good keeps destroying my life, should I stop? The triplets huddled closer under the broken stall. The rain fell harder. And somewhere deep inside Mornike, a quiet war began. Between survival and the kind of humanity that refuses to die, even when punished for existing. That night, Mornike did not sleep. The rain had stopped, but its memory clung to her wrapper, to her bones, to the smell of damp wood that followed her into her one-room space. She sat on the floor with her back against the wall, knees drawn to her chest, listening to the city breathe outside. Cars passed. Generators hummed. Someone laughed in the distance. Life was moving forward. She was not. Her mind kept returning to the moment the stall broke. The sound of wood snapping, the look on the boys' faces, the way nobody had said sorry. She pressed her palms against her eyes. This is how it ends, she whispered. Quietly. But her story had not begun in Oshodi. It had begun years earlier, when endurance still felt temporary. Mornike Ajayi grew up in a small town where everybody knew everybody, and shame traveled faster than truth. Her mother sold smoked fish. Her father died early. She learned young that a woman's strength was not celebrated, it was expected. At 23, she married Kunal Ajayi. He was not rich, but he was kind. They built their life slowly, brick by brick, promise by promise. When they moved to Lagos, Mornike believed suffering had an expiry date. She sold fabrics from a small shop near the port. Kunal worked the docks. They saved. They planned. At night, they talked about children. Even if we don't have plenty, Kunal once said, smiling, we will raise them with dignity. She believed him. Then came the accident. A container slipped. A shout. A body crushed between steel and concrete. The dock paid condolences, not compensation. Kunal's family arrived within days. They didn't cry with her. They counted. This shop was built with his money, one uncle said. You cannot keep it. She tried to speak. They didn't listen. By the time morning ended, Mornike was homeless. She moved into a shared room, sold her last fabrics, borrowed money she knew she might never repay. And that was how Oshodi Market found her. Back in the present, dawn crept into her room like an unwanted guest. Mornike rose slowly, joints stiff, heart heavier than her body. She had no stall to return to, no certainty, only habit. She went anyway. Oshodi Market did not pause for grief. Traders shouted. Buses honked. Money exchanged hands. She stood at the edge, watching. Then she saw them. The triplets. They were sitting near a closed shop, backs against metal shutters, knees pulled up to their chests. They looked smaller than yesterday. Hunger does that. Mornike hesitated. She had no food to give. No stall. No protection. Only herself. She walked toward them. Did you sleep? She asked softly. One nodded. One shrugged. One said nothing. She swallowed. I don't have food today, she said. But, come. She led them to the back of the market where waste bins sat like forgotten graves. She found discarded bread, not rotten, just rejected. She cleaned it as best as she could. She tore it into pieces. They ate without complaint. A woman passing by scoffed. See them, she muttered. Four beggars encouraging each other. Mornike felt the familiar heat of humiliation rise, but she stayed quiet. Silence had become her shield. Days turned into weeks. More Nike found another corner to sell food. Smaller, riskier, cheaper meals. Every morning, the boys appeared. Every afternoon, insults followed. "Madam, your mates are building houses. Why are you raising children that are not yours? Don't you want a better life?" She wanted to scream. Instead, she served food. She noticed things. One boy always waited for the others before eating. One flinched at loud voices. One counted everything: spoons, people, buses. They were not ordinary street children. But more Nike did not ask questions. She had learned that curiosity could be expensive. One evening, a market leader confronted her. "You are drawing attention," he said. "People are talking." She bowed her head. "I'm only selling food." "You are selling trouble," he replied. "Remove those boys." That night, more Nike sat with the triplets behind her stall. "I may not always be here," she said carefully. "If one day you come and I'm gone, you must be strong." One of them looked up. "Will you leave us?" he asked. Her chest tightened. "No," she said. "But life sometimes moves people without asking them." They nodded, not fully understanding. More Nike looked at them and felt a fear she had never felt before. Not fear of hunger, not fear of poverty, but fear of attachment. Because loving them meant pain was guaranteed. Yet every morning, she still cooked. Every afternoon, she still shared. And every night, she asked herself the same question, growing heavier with time. How long can a poor woman afford to be kind in a world that punishes it daily? The answer was approaching. Slowly. Relentlessly. By the third month, everyone in Oshodi Market knew more Nike Ajayi's routine. She arrived before sunrise. She cooked quietly. She fed 3 boys before feeding herself. And she endured whatever followed. What changed was not the market. It was her body. Her wrapper hung looser. Her cheeks sank. Her steps slowed. Hunger had begun to live inside her, not loudly, not dramatically, but patiently, like something that knew it would win eventually. One morning, as she stirred a pot of beans that was already too thin, a woman named Saad, a trader with gold earrings and a loud voice, leaned over. "You still haven't learned," Saad said, clicking her tongue. "This kindness of yours will bury you." More Nike did not look up. "I'm not asking anyone to follow me," she replied softly. Saad laughed. "You think God will open heaven because of 3 dirty boys?" More Nike's hand froze mid-stir. "God is already watching," she said. The laughter that followed was sharp and public. That afternoon, the boys arrived later than usual. Their clothes were torn. Their faces were dusty. One of them had a cut above his eyebrow. More Nike felt something twist inside her chest. "What happened?" she asked. They exchanged glances. One spoke. "Some men chased us from where we slept." "Why?" "They said we make the place look dirty." More Nike closed her eyes. The world was constantly reminding her of its rules. That poverty was acceptable only if it stayed hidden. She served them food. Smaller portions today. She noticed immediately. The boy who usually waited didn't. He ate fast, eyes down, ashamed of his hunger. That night, more Nike skipped her own meal. She told herself she wasn't hungry. Her stomach disagreed. Trouble escalated quietly. Customers stopped coming. Some were warned. Some were ashamed. Some simply didn't want association. A landlord came. "I heard you are sheltering street children," he said. "That is not what I agreed to." She begged. "I don't shelter them. I only feed them." He shook his head. "You are attracting attention. Attention brings problems." The rent doubled. More Nike paid anyway. By borrowing. Again. One evening, rain poured suddenly, heavy and unforgiving. The boys huddled under her stall. Mornike watched the sky darken and felt fear rise like bile. This stall was never meant to be shelter. But it was all they had. A uniformed officer passed by and stopped. "What is this?" he demanded. "Just eating," Mornike said. "You are encouraging vagrancy. They are children." He looked at her. "And you are poor. Who will save who?" He walked away laughing. Mornike felt something break quietly inside her. Not hope. Pride. That night, she could not pray. Words felt useless. Instead, she remembered her husband, Connell's voice. "Even if we don't have plenty." Her chest tightened. "If you were here," she whispered, "would you tell me to stop?" The silence answered nothing. The next week brought heat. Thick, punishing heat. Business slowed further. Mornike fainted once while standing. She woke up on the ground. People staring. The boys stood over her, terrified. "Auntie," one cried. "Don't die." She forced herself to sit up. "I'm fine," she lied. But something had changed. The market had begun to watch her, not with curiosity, but with expectation. They were waiting for her to fail. One afternoon, a well-dressed woman stopped at her stall. She looked at the boys, then at Mornike. "You are wasting your life," she said calmly. "You could remarry. Start again." Mornike met her eyes. "These boys didn't choose this life. And neither did you." Mornike said nothing, because that was the problem. She was choosing every day to stay human, and it was costing her everything. The final blow came quietly. A notice appeared one morning. "Market sanitation exercise. Unauthorized structures will be removed." Mornike's hands shook as she read it. She knew what it meant. She knew who it targeted. That evening, she sat with the boys. "There may come a day," she said carefully, "when I cannot help you anymore." One of them shook his head. "You will always be here." Her eyes burned. She looked away, because love had become dangerous, and tomorrow, the market would make her choose between survival and the last piece of herself she had not yet surrendered. Rain had left the market muddy and sticky, the kind that clings to shoes, wrappers, and every small hope. Mornike Ajayi stood at her new corner, exhausted, rubbing her wrists from years of hauling pots, stirring food, and chasing away trouble she never caused. The triplets waited beside her, quiet, watching the customers pass. No one noticed them, small shadows moving through the chaos. But the audience, knew something she didn't. The boys weren't ordinary street children. Not really. Years ago, they had been born into a family that would have guaranteed them privilege. Their father, Mr. Adesanya, had wealth that spanned continents, a man respected in boardrooms and feared in courtrooms. But life had been cruel. A fire destroyed the mansion where the boys lived, killing their parents. The estate was tied up in corruption, greedy relatives, and lawyers who spoke only in money. The boys disappeared from public record, forgotten by society but never by fate. Mornike didn't know this. She only knew their eyes, dark, hungry, patient. And that was enough. On a typical afternoon, Mornike served rice and stew while keeping an eye on the approaching storm clouds. "Eat slowly," she whispered. "We might not have more today." The youngest boy, Tund, tilted his head. "You always feed us first." Mornike smiled faintly, almost bitterly. "Because you deserve it." A passerby scoffed. "People like you think feeding children makes you holy. It doesn't pay rent." Her jaw tightened. She turned back to the boys, refusing to argue. She had learned that words could burn louder than rain. That night, when the market had quieted, Mornike lay on her mat, staring at the ceiling. Her thoughts kept returning to the boys. Their resilience puzzled her. They seemed more than what they were. She remembered small things. One of them knew how to calculate prices faster than any customer. One never touched her money or begged. One counted every coin and portion meticulously. They are street children, she muttered. Nothing more. And yet, there was a sense that the world had wronged them far beyond hunger and neglect. Meanwhile, the market watched her every move. Some traders whispered, "Why does she insist on keeping those boys here? It's dangerous." Others sneered, "She's probably using them for sympathy. That's why she's still struggling." No one guessed the truth. Only you, the audience, held the secret. The boy's future, though hidden from her, was intertwined with power, money, influence. And one day, those things would come knocking at her stall in the most cinematic way possible. The tension in the market escalated slowly, like smoke curling before a fire. One afternoon, the boys were nearly hit by a speeding motorcycle. More Nike screamed, running to drag them out of harm's way. "You're reckless," one trader shouted, shaking his head. "Do you want to die for them?" "I've already lost too much to care," she said, voice barely audible. Inside, her heart was a storm. The fear she carried was different now, not for herself, but for the boys. She didn't yet understand it, but their survival was becoming the most important thing in her life. That evening, as she prepared a small meal, the eldest boy, Cunnel, spoke for the first time in weeks. "Why do you do this for us? Nobody else cares." More Nike paused. Her spoon hovered over the pot. "Because someone has to," she said softly. Silence fell. Heavy. Real. And somewhere in that silence, fate was taking notes. Because years later, the boys, who now had nothing, would return everything to her. Not through magic, not through vengeance, but through the quiet justice of gratitude. The chapter ends with more Nike collapsing slightly on the floor of her tiny stall, exhausted, hungry, and humiliated again, yet determined. The audience knows what she doesn't. The boys she protects are the key to her redemption, her recognition, and the life she never thought she would reclaim. A quiet question lingers. Does kindness matter when no one knows the true value of the people you save? His sun was unforgiving that afternoon. Its light poured over Oshodi Market like molten gold, reflecting off plastic sheets and puddles of yesterday's rain. Every shadow seemed sharper, every sound harsher. Mornike Ajayi wiped the sweat from her brow as she carried a tray of steaming rice toward her small, makeshift stall. Her hands shook slightly, not from weakness, but from the constant tension that life had become. The market was alive with noise. Traders shouting, engines honking, customers bargaining. Yet, her focus was singular. 3 boys, waiting patiently by the corner. Tund, the youngest, tugged at her wrapper. "Auntie, is today our lucky day?" he asked softly. Mornike looked down, forcing a faint smile. "Every day is a lucky day if we survive it," she said. The boys giggled quietly, but the laughter was fragile, like thin glass ready to shatter. That morning, a messenger had arrived at her stall. A letter. No envelope. Just folded paper, pressed into her hand with urgency by a man too scared to stay. She unfolded it slowly, revealing the words. "Your stall must be vacated immediately. Authorities have declared the area unsafe. Return the boys or face arrest." Her heart sank. She looked at the boys. Their innocent faces, unaware of the storm closing in, made her chest ache. "They can't take you," she whispered, barely audible. Hours passed. By noon, a group of officials arrived. Faces cold, bodies rigid, hands carrying papers and authority like weapons. "You have been warned," one officer said. "This is the final notice. Leave immediately." Mornike bowed her head, her mind racing. She didn't argue. Not today. Instead, she looked at the boys. "If we leave," she said, voice breaking, I can only take you to a place where we eat less. We share everything. Understand? They nodded, trusting her implicitly. The market watched. Some with pity, some with scorn. None knew the weight of the decision she was about to make. That night, she led them to a narrow alley behind the market. The alley smelled of waste and wet earth, but it offered shelter from the immediate danger. She shared her small portion of rice equally, leaving herself with almost nothing. Eat slowly, she said, and don't waste a grain. The boys obeyed. Then came the moment that would define her sacrifice. Mornike took the last of her money, the coins she had been saving for weeks to repair her stall, and handed it to them. This is for you, she said. Buy bread. Stay alive. Do not come back to me hungry. They protested, tears brimming in their eyes. No, Auntie. We can't take this from you. Listen, she said firmly. I am giving because I have nothing else to offer. Use it wisely. Survive. That is all I can do. The boys swallowed, nodding, understanding in a way only children who have suffered deeply can. Days turned into weeks. Mornike went hungry so they could eat. She walked farther to find cheaper food, sold smaller portions to herself, and endured the heat, the rain, and the humiliation silently. The market began to whisper again. She's even smaller now, Saad said, pointing at her frail frame. Why does she insist on this nonsense? She's lost everything, another trader said. She has nothing. Why would she care? Mornike didn't answer. She only kept walking, only kept cooking, only kept giving, because in the quiet corners of her heart, she had learned the first lesson. Sacrifice is the only language the world respects. One afternoon the boys returned, not for food, but for her. Auntie, Kunal said softly, we have something to show you. She followed them hesitantly to the back of the market. There, hidden behind crates and discarded sheets, lay a small, well-kept notebook. Inside were sketches, calculations, and plans. For the first time, Mornike realized the boys were not only resilient, they were brilliant. They had been planning quietly, observing, learning, surviving. Why are you showing me this? She asked, suspicion and pride mingling in her voice. Because you gave us a chance, Kunal said. Even when you had nothing. We are going to make it right. One day. For you. Her hands shook. Her heart raced. The quiet justice she had only glimpsed in dreams was starting to take shape. That night, she lay on her thin mat, exhausted but restless. The market had tried to crush her. Society had mocked her. Poverty had threatened to silence her kindness. And yet, the boys were alive. They were learning. They were watching. And one day, the world would have to acknowledge what she had done. She closed her eyes, imagining the future, not the Mercedes Benz she had never seen, not the recognition she had never received, but a world where kindness, even unrecognized, held power. And somewhere deep inside, she smiled faintly, exhausted but unbroken. The morning was thick with humidity, the kind that clings to your skin and makes every breath feel heavy. Oshodi Market hummed like a living organism. Chaotic, stubborn, alive. Mornike Ajayi arrived early, carrying her worn tray and the memory of yesterday's struggles pressed against her chest like a stone. The triplets were already there. Tund, Kunal, and Bola had arranged themselves quietly, waiting with the patience only those who have known hunger intimately can muster. Good morning, Mornike said softly, setting down the tray. Morning, Auntie, Kunal replied. His voice was steady, but something in his eyes suggested a shift, a quiet calculation, as if the boys were seeing the world differently now. Over the past few weeks, subtle changes had begun. The boys were no longer merely surviving, they were observing. Every customer, every trader, every minor injustice, became a lesson in human behavior. Mornike noticed it, though she didn't understand its implications. "Why are you staring at that man counting coins?" she asked one afternoon. Connell looked up, calm. "He's deciding who deserves what. People are predictable." Mornike nodded slowly, feeling a chill she could not name. Later that day, a stranger appeared. Tall, clean-shaven, carrying a briefcase that shone in the harsh sunlight. He didn't speak at first. He only observed Mornike and the boys from a distance. The boys noticed him immediately. "Who is that?" Tund whispered. "I don't know," Mornike replied cautiously. The stranger wrote something in a notebook, glanced at the boys again, then left as silently as he had arrived. But his presence lingered in Mornike's mind like a shadow. That night, she cooked in silence, her mind racing. The boys sat nearby, whispering amongst themselves. "Do you think she will ever know?" Bola asked. "Not yet," Connell replied. "But one day, everything will be clear." Mornike caught fragments of their conversation. Something in her chest tightened, a mixture of fear and hope. She had never imagined that these children, whom she had fed for years, carried within them secrets larger than her own suffering. Days passed. The stranger returned, then another. A pattern began to emerge. Mornike noticed them whispering to the boys, exchanging small envelopes, documents, and sometimes, just glances that seemed heavier than words. She confronted the boys one evening. "Who are these men?" she demanded, her voice trembling. "Why do they come for you?" Connell looked at her steadily. "They're friends," he said, but his hesitation betrayed him. "I don't want strangers near you," she said firmly. "We know," he replied softly, "and we appreciate it. But this is bigger than all of us." Her stomach dropped. The market had tested her patience. Traders had humiliated her. Authorities had threatened her. Poverty had squeezed her to the bone. And now, the boys themselves were connected to something she couldn't yet comprehend. That night, she dreamed of the boys' parents. A mansion swallowed by fire. Flames licking the walls. A man in a crisp suit reaching for them, too late. She woke sweating, heart hammering. Something inside her whispered, "They are not just children. They are the reason everything will change." The first subtle hints of the hidden truth revealed themselves in small ways. Connell quoting laws she didn't understand. Tund recalling events from before she met them. Bola drawing buildings she had never seen, planning in miniature the world she thought she would never enter. And slowly the audience, you, begins to understand the truth she does not. These boys are heirs to a fortune. They are the living remnants of a family erased by tragedy and corruption. Yet Mornike, the woman who gave everything, who sacrificed her own survival for them, remains blissfully unaware. The tension reaches its peak one evening when a wealthy man finally approaches her directly. "Mornike Ajayi?" he asks, voice calm but commanding. She nods cautiously. "My name is Mr. Oladipo," he continues. "And I believe you know my nephews." The boys freeze. Mornike's eyes widen, panic and confusion colliding. "You know them," she stammers. "They have been waiting for someone like you," he says. "Someone who would care, even when no one else would." Mornike's chest tightens. Tears threaten. The truth, finally, begins to seep through the cracks of her understanding. She doesn't yet know the full story. She doesn't yet know the fortune, the inheritance, the recognition that awaits. But she feels it. A subtle vibration in her chest that promises the world is about to shift. And somewhere in that quiet, heavy realization, she whispers, "Perhaps, kindness is never wasted." The sun was setting over Oshodi Market, but the chaos never really paused. Its sounds, the shouts, the horns, the clatter of plastic crates, mingled with the scent of fried plantains and gasoline, forming a strange symphony that only survivors understood. Mornike Ajayi stood at her small stall, hands trembling slightly from the weight of the day. She had cooked, served, and endured insults, as always. But tonight, something felt different. The air itself seemed heavier, charged, waiting for a change. Earlier that day, Saad, the traitor who had mocked her relentlessly, had confronted her again. "You are a fool," Saad snapped, gold earrings catching the sunlight. "Do you think feeding those boys will save you from life?" Mornike looked at her silently, her voice calm but firm. "I am not feeding them for me. I am feeding them because they are hungry." Saad laughed, but it was hollow. Something about the way Mornike said it, steady and unyielding, unsettled her. By evening, 3 black Mercedes Benz SUVs pulled into the market. Their engines cut through the market noise, demanding attention. People stopped, stared. A hush fell. Mornike froze. Her eyes widened. The boys ran ahead, excitement and disbelief shining through their grime-streaked faces. "Auntie! Auntie, come!" Connell shouted. From the SUVs, men in suits stepped out. Not ordinary men. They carried themselves with a quiet authority, the kind that demanded respect. "Mornike Ajayi?" one of them asked, voice calm, measured. She nodded, trembling. "We are here because of these boys," he said, gesturing toward Tund, Connell, and Bola. "They have told us about you. About what you have done for them." Mornike's heart hammered. She opened her mouth but no words came. The first man, Mr. Oladipo, continued. "You have given what most people would never give. You have given when it cost you everything. For that, we are here to ensure that you are recognized, that you are rewarded, not with vengeance, but with justice that is quiet, earned, and undeniable." The market murmured. Traders whispered, eyes wide. Some tried to hide shame. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Saad, standing in the crowd, suddenly paled. Mornike turned to her, her gaze steady. "I am not bitter," she said softly. "But kindness is stronger than cruelty. And it survives." The words lingered. Heavy. True. The men handed her an envelope. Inside, documents, property deeds, and the first installment of funds to rebuild her life. A small shop. Enough to live with dignity. The triplets stood beside her, holding hands. Their eyes shone with pride and gratitude. "You earned this," Connell whispered. Mornike shook her head, tears streaking her dirt-stained face. "I didn't earn anything," she said quietly. "I only survived what was right." Then came the merciful twist. Saad approached her, head bowed, gold earrings trembling. I was wrong," she said. "I mocked you when you did the right thing." Mornike held up a hand. "Mercy is stronger than anger," she said softly. "Let the past rest." Saad nodded, speechless. The market held its breath. No one shouted. No one clapped. But justice had landed. Not with noise. Not with vengeance. Not with humiliation. Quietly. Perfectly. That night, Mornike sat in her new shop. The walls were bare. The floor was clean. The smell of fresh paint mingled with the familiar aroma of rice and stew she had already started preparing. The boys were asleep nearby, their small bodies curled up like fragile secrets. She looked around, exhausted but whole. And she realized justice had never been about proving them wrong. It had been about enduring, about patience, about the quiet courage to keep giving, even when no one noticed. Her chest tightened with relief, but also with reflection. Because in this world, sometimes being right isn't enough. Sometimes, choosing the right path, even when punished for it, is its own reward. The sun was setting over Oshodi Market, but the chaos never really paused. Struggle and resilience. She allowed herself to breathe. Really breathe. The story of her life, the humiliation, the hunger, the relentless market scorn, the endless nights of worry, was finally meeting its quiet justice. Not through spectacle. not through loud revenge, but through recognition, mercy, and the unspoken truth that kindness endures even when no one sees. The market outside whispered its own story. Traders who had once mocked her now walked past with careful glances, some in shame, some in awe. Saad, who had caused her so much pain, had been offered forgiveness and accepted it silently. Mornike understood that mercy could sometimes be stronger than anger, and choosing it left a weightless peace no money or recognition could buy. She looked at the boys, her chest tightening with both pride and reflection. "They will grow up strong," she whispered, "because they knew what it means to survive, to learn, to love, and to respect someone who gave everything, even when it cost her everything." And yet, the question lingered, heavy, like the air before a storm. Could one woman's choices change the world? Could goodness, patient and quiet, ripple through lives, long after the world tried to crush it? Mornike did not answer. She only sat, watching the night deepen. Stars began to shine faintly above the market, and the city hummed a lullaby of survival and hope. She smiled faintly, knowing that the world had not yet finished teaching lessons, and that some of its hardest truths were best left for reflection. Finally, she turned to the audience, the ones who had followed her story, felt her pain, and endured each slow revelation alongside her. "I have shared my life with you," she said softly, voice calm but heavy. "I want to know what you think. Did Mornike choose right? Did her kindness matter? What would you have done in her place?" She paused, letting the weight of the story settle. Comment below where you are watching from, how the weather is treating you, and tell me your thoughts on this story. And if you can, rate this video on a scale of 1 to 10. Be honest, because every story deserves reflection. Her final words lingered, soft but profound. Sometimes the right choice comes with no applause, no fanfare, no guarantee, and yet it is still worth it.